It is exactly 7:30 on the dot. Welcome everybody to the September 12th board meeting. Instructions on how to make public comment during the meeting. At points in the meeting when the meeting chair requests public comment, members of the public shall indicate their desire to speak. All public comments shall be addressed to the board of directors and limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The board of directors may choose to respond to a comment or request staff to respond at the conclusion of the public comment period. Looks like we are all present. So I would like to call to order. And is there a motion to adopt the calendar or the agenda? Is there any questions about the agenda? Any issues that anybody has?
Any changes?
Any changes? No. Okay. Does the public have anything to say about the agenda?
No, actually, I didn't even look at it, so.
Oh, okay. All right. Is there a motion
For what?
to adopt the agenda?
Yeah, need a motion.
Okay, we're just gonna adopt it. All right. So moving on to the consent calendar with the draft minutes of the regular meeting and the bills paid for this last month. Any questions? I'm just gonna motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any questions from the public about the consent calendar?
No.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Consent calendar is. All right, moving on to item D, public comment to open time for items not on the agenda. Speakers may comment only on non-agenda items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district. The board may not take action on, consider, or debate items not on the agenda except under narrow circumstances meeting statutory tests. Response to comments on non-agenda items will be limited to factual information or clarifying questions from staff or board at the conclusion of the public comment period. The president may refer to the matter to staff or to the future meeting agenda. All right. Stephen, would you like to?
Yes, thanks for that. Again, welcome back, Chris.
Thank you.
Shave? What's it?
It's always got to change. I got to keep things interesting.
Okay, all right. You look good. Welcome back. So actually, as you know, I used to be much more involved with this process. I felt like my presence was important because the CSD for years and years and years has just been blindly going along with whatever the general manager, either ED or Tom before him wanted, and there really was very little discussion. And it's kind of frustrating because we do have needs, and I see so little outreach beyond you guys talking among yourselves and with staff. What are you doing? It just seems to me that we have such a golden opportunity in Marinwood because actually we have a lot of funding for the amount of infrastructure that we need to maintain. And it is frustrating that you go into the park, we spent a couple $1 million on that shed, Bill Hansel's shed, that doesn't even fit all of our vehicles. We've got a bunch of benches out there. We got a plastic one, we've got a one that has Jimmy Juarez painted up like a biker, called the Godfather, and then there's another bench that is a board on a bunch of buckets, and it's just, there's like no frigging plan. We've got erosion, we lack vision in this community, and that's what your job is, vision. Have some guts.
Listen, and remember those who are
The future is all of ours, but you have, sorry about this, The future is all of ours, but you guys have the most to say about it. And if you're not putting forth ideas, putting forth a vision, making the community better, making it more livable, more beautiful, you know, why are you here? Just to spend an hour and once a month to say, oh, that sounds good? I don't know. Kind of disappointed. Anyhow, and my time is up, so you don't have to listen to me anymore. You can discuss everything you want among yourselves.
Thank you for your comments, Stephen, and
Well,
for your...
you know how I feel, Siobhan. You're like one of the problems.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Have a good night. All right, apparently there's nobody else who has any comments, so we're gonna move on to district matters. We're gonna take a look at the Emergency Creek Bank slide repair and retaining wall project. And the request is to accept the bid from the lowest qualified bidder in response to the notice that we put out. And I believe Eric has something to say to us before we do anything.
Sure. I tried to, again, give you guys a detailed staff report, at least the detail needed. So we closed bidding last week. It went through a formal process. We, at the end of the day, received only 2 bids on this project, and a lot of the feedback was just the turnaround timing on needing to get this project done. The creek work before the water board and the Fish and Wildlife kick us out. A lot of people had some hesitation and couldn't mobilize that quickly to get it done, but these 2 groups did bid. While I wish we would have had more bids, I was actually very pleased that one of the bids did come within a engineer's estimate that we produced for FEMA. In fact, it's actually slightly under the estimate that we had. Both firms are very qualified. I will say, we're still kind of waiting on final obligation for FEMA, but that's not going to happen today or tomorrow. It's going through that process. I have no indication that they won't fund it. That said, it's a project that needs to get done whether FEMA funds it or not. It's within the budget that we thought it was going to, or hoped that it would fall in. And so right now, the 3 options you have is simply, kind of do nothing at this time. You could reject the 2 bids with the options that I put in there, or accept the bid submitted by the lowest qualified bidder, which in this case is Westward Builders LLC, and authorize staff to execute contract. Assuming that that is something that happens tonight, I am in a lot of contact already with the low bidder. I think we can have the contract finalized by the end of the week. The only piece we are waiting on right now is for the county to finish up on their permitting. We've got all of the other permits in place, all of the environmental regs are in place. We just need the county basically to stamp. They just shot back a couple other questions. They're looking for something from the geotech. So why it took so long, I'm not entirely sure, but it is moving as quickly, hopefully, as possible. We did kind of hike it up the ladder at the county a little bit to make sure that they understood that there's a time urgency and getting this project done is critical. So again, staff recommendation at this point is to accept both the base bid and the add-alt bid that was received by Westward Builders, and authorize the district manager to engage the bidder in executing a contract for the work and get the work started and get the work done.
Is it possible to get Mary Sackett involved and push them? Because
Two steps ahead of you, Bill.
Okay.
That's the end of the ladder.
I mean,
I reached out to her office.
county just sucks as far as permitting, and they drag every step of the way.
Well, it is now in DPW's hands. I feel like in land use, I actually feel a lot better about that. We're just waiting for it to get to them. We've had a lot of communication with them leading up to this point. So I'm remaining hopefully optimistic that we can get this wrapped up hopefully by the end of the week on that too. They know the designer, the engineers who did this stuff. They actually do a lot of work for the county as well. So I think they're just kind of dotting their I's and crossing their T's. But I'd like to think that it's been given the appropriate sense of urgency by the appropriate people at this point in time.
I have a question. Do we expect that this is what the project will end up costing, or what's What's the probability that this isn't gonna be the final number?
I don't know that I can answer that question. Would I be surprised by some levels of change orders throughout this project? Absolutely not. You know, once you start digging and you get in there, you just unforeseen circumstances, you don't know what it is until you know what it is. That said, the amount of planning and engineering that has gone into this project is phenomenal. So I think that, especially on the hydrology work that we've done and all the creek bank and creek channel work, Matt Smelter's the best. You know, he is the best. And Miller Pacific's very well reputable too, and they did all the engineering work on the, and all the geotech work for the wall that's gonna go up top. So, I remain hopeful, I remain optimistic. I will say, if FEMA commits, they don't just say, okay, here's your number. It's, you know, FEMA's kind of a reimbursement thing. They'll accept this as what it is, and if costs go up, we just have to, appeal isn't the right word, but communicate with them that, you know, costs have gone up, here's why, these are allowable increases, and they will increase most likely as well.
And this just needs to get done before the rain starts, and we cannot wait for FEMA, because that may take longer than we have to even start the project.
No, well, FEMA's recommendation is you don't wait for us to obligate. You know, I was just in contact with our representative from FEMA today. I let them know that this is on the agenda, that we got bids, they came in at the engineer's estimate, slightly under, and that I would follow up with them tomorrow with some specific numbers so that he can start working on that, what they call the project on the FEMA side.
Okay.
So get all of that entered too. So.
Right, anybody else?
I have one more question. And do we have a sense from either bid how long the project will take?
In total, yeah, it's actually kind of laid out in the bidding documents
Okay.
themselves that we put out.
Okay.
I can tell you right now, the mission critical part is all the creek channel work, because you hit environmental regulatory deadlines. Worst case scenario, it's October 15th. You have to be out of the creek channel and you can do no more work, because we're talking about damming the creek and then transporting water from one part of the dam to where the creek runs again. If we get a lot of rain, October 15th is the worst case scenario. It's pretty rare. And then from that point, they'll extend it a week at a time based on how weather goes. So the contractor is well aware, and we feel comfortable assuming they can get to work ideally and start mobilizing by next week.
Yeah.
And then, so they can do some creek work, but in terms of the wall that they're putting in, is that in the October 15th also?
No, right now it's, you know, think about it working from the bottom up. So when it's all totally said and done, this will probably push a little bit into January, weather delays, not counting, but it will be well stabilized in the channel and what the original problem was, which was the undercutting of the creek
Yes.
bank. And then the wall will likely start after that work is done, which actually coincides nicely, because if all of our timing kind of works out perfect, then they'll start doing some of the upper bank work shortly after the pool closes. So we won't have to worry about putting up security fencing or having any disruptions there either, because, you know, you're talking about some equipment that's definitely going to do a lot of damage to the turf, no matter how much we do to protect it. And all that was written in as part of it, you know, returning it to pre-existing condition and everything else. So, yeah. But we'll coordinate with our staff on that.
I have a question. Should FEMA not reimburse us, where are these funds coming out of?
Our general fund.
It's just not an option.
Or you have your board designated reserves too, which I think, you know, has about 500, maybe 600, I can't remember the exact number I gave to you last month.
I think it's 5.
It might be 5 at this point, with the year that just ended, but we're still going to need 6. Then it would come out of our general fund, which we can afford it. We have the funds in there. I mean, we have,
I know, I just feel like it's a question that should be asked on the record.
sure,
Before we approve this, to be sure
it would come out of our general fund.
FEMA's not 100% guaranteed, so.
Right. And this isn't typically the type of project that you're taking out a loan on yet. There's no asset really to back it with.
Yeah,
To offset.
A giant retaining wall, what are you talking about?
Yeah, who wouldn't want that?
I mean, it keeps the home.
Yeah.
right, all in favor of approving Eric to accept?
We need a motion.
Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Wait, we are approving to accept the lowest qualified bidder in response to this and including the alt add-on bid.
Yeah, the add-all was done by FEMA's suggestion. They wanted to kind of break that part off because it's slightly different from the rest of the project in that it is impacting an existing building, so they wanted to kind of be able to separate that cost out. There's still a little bit of question to that, but in talking with our last rep, he doesn't seem to think that's going to be an issue.
Alright, so we have a motion, do I have a second?
Second was right there.
Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. You're approved, go ahead, Eric, run with it.
Is he?
I feel like he's already been running.
Do you need to leave
I
and send
appreciate
an
it.
email
I'll fill in
right
sand.
now?
Yes, all right.
Do you want us to pause and go write an email now so we can? I'm happy to do that. Alright, so we have an update on our pension liability analysis with the August 2023 release of CalPERS annual valuation reports for measure date of June 30th, 2022. Before we start, I know Jeff's not here, but oh my goodness, thank you so much. So you're gonna watch this probably. I really appreciate your continued support of us in taking all this time to look at the numbers, download the numbers, write up this amazing report with, I don't know, like, you guys saw, he's got 2 different sets of glossary, and he's gone through each one with even examples, and even though I've been looking at this for 5 years now, each time it makes it just a little bit easier to digest the overwhelming depth that we're gonna be in. But thank you for helping us figure out what our liabilities are and keeping us up to date as they sometimes contract and mostly expand. So, thank you, Jeff. Does anybody have any questions or comments they want to make about this before I just talk more? Because, that's okay.
I'll give you some kind of key points when you're ready.
You guys want Eric to talk?
Key points, jump.
Okay, well, again, to much of Savon's point, a lot of kudos go to Jeff Naylor, who definitely spent some time going through the latest reports that just came out last month from CalPERS and updating the charts accordingly that you see in here. One of the kind of key points here is, these last couple of years especially kind of show the volatility that is involved with pension and why everybody says, when you're looking at pension, you're looking at it through a macro lens, not necessarily a micro lens, because if you look at it year over year, year before last, pension went down by a little over 1.7 million. This year, it went up by 2.5 million. So that's the difference between a 20% rate of return on the pension investments versus a negative 6% rate of return on pension investments.
Which makes our annual required contribution go way up.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. So
$739.
the long term, if you look at this even through a semi-macro lens, in the past 6 years, the UAL has increased just under $2 million from where it was just 6 years ago. It's currently at 6.5 million, which, in round numbers kind of is equal to 99% of our annual budget that we just passed for this fiscal year. Doesn't mean that all gets paid off, but that puts it into perspective as to what the total debt is to the district. Relatively speaking to other agencies, it's actually a pretty small unfunded pension liability. That said, we're a pretty small agency, so to have it be a ratio, looking at it, it's a large chunk. The big part here is, again, CalPERS just has a real confidence in setting their rate where they believe that they're going to get a 6.8% rate of return over the long haul. If you could guarantee me a 6.8% rate of return, I'll give you my life savings right now and put them all into it. That's it. It's just, it's hardly realistic yet. Some years they get 20, some years they get -6. So that's why you have to look, and this is coming off of a -6 year. For the fiscal year that just ended, which isn't this study, remember these studies are always a year behind, CalPERS unofficially announced a 5.8% rate of return. So their target is 6.8, they got 5.8, so it's still coming under, which means it's going to continue to increase a little bit next year. And I'm not saying anything that's not obvious here when you look at this, and I'm certainly not trying to disparage, but you know, a lot of this is driven by the safety and the tier 1 pensions, which are the 3 at 50 plan, is really kind of what pushes it and equates to about 80% of the overall total pension debt. And again, that just means our employer contributions continue to rise. Both the normal percentage, which is what we pay as a percentage of payroll, so those percentages go up for all plans in years like this, as well as the annual required contribution based on the unfunded liability. Moving forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions about some of this stuff in this chart specifically, but kind of looking at this and moving forward and asking, you know, how or should or can we start to address this? I would look at this from a few ways, and this isn't nothing that we haven't already talked about. One, let's get this large project behind us done, and let's see if FEMA's going to pay for 93% of that, because that's a large chunk of money. You know, towards the end of this calendar year, beginning of next calendar year, we'll have the audit for the fiscal year, so that'll let us know where we stand, you know, from balance sheet perspectives, audited financial statements. And then shortly after that, you start working on the fiscal year 24-25 budget. So I would recommend, with looking at that budget, assuming, again, FEMA comes through on funding, we don't have any other large-scale catastrophes, we are in a decent cash place, it wouldn't be a bad idea to start talking to some financial experts, some actuaries, and looking at this in conjunction with our OPEB healthcare liabilities, and literally trying to figure out if the district was to contribute more to our long-term liabilities, is there one over the other that would provide a greater bang for the buck? Does it make more sense to put more into or meet the full actuarial recommended contribution for OPEB each year, be putting that into that trust, or does it make more sense to be putting it into pension? I have my thoughts, but I'm not an expert in the matter. I do know that, again, pension is like a Richter scale in terms of where your UAL is based on what their market investments do. OPEB is a nice steady line that just continually increases because healthcare continues to rise and the cost of it continues to rise. And our employment levels are pretty stable on that. So I'm sure I did not do Jeff great justice in my very quick rundown there, but those were kind of some of the highlights I wanted to make sure to point out. You know, even though we have reduced full-time staff, even though payroll has reduced over, you know, since 2016, in general, our UAL does continue to go up, and most of that is based on these kind of irrational market and rate of return formulas and how they project how much money they will need in the future to pay for pensions.
And just also to be clear, I had asked Eric this already and we had confirmed, we had budgeted more than 739,226 for what we were thinking we might need to pay this year. So we have the money even if we do need to pay, or we're not paying for all of it, but if we do have to pay all of it and then get only some of it back from FEMA, we do have this already budgeted in our budget for this year.
If we don't have to cover the whole expense of FEMA, of the.
Oh, no, we have it all.
No, we have it all.
Yeah.
Even if we have to pay for FEMA, this has already been budgeted.
She's talking about the annual costs,
Our
not
annual
the
costs.
$6.2 million.
Not the 6.2, the 739 that we owe this year.
Correct.
We have that already, we actually have more than that, we have like 770, I think, be something budgeted. So we have that as a line item in our budget, as money set aside to pay this down. So it's a huge number and it did jump from last year, but I'm just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we do have that in our budget, even though we have this unexpected FEMA cost.
When do we have to pay this?
Well, you have to pay it annually, so every year you have to pay what is known as the annual required contribution. That's based kind of solely on what your unfunded accrued liability level is at. You can pay that either in monthly installments, or you can pay it with one lump sum payment in July. For the past probably 5 years at least now, we've been paying it with one lump sum payment, which removes us from having to pay interest on it. By doing so, we saved about $17,000 in interest payments this year because we paid it up front at the very beginning of the year, which is part of the reason why July is such an expensive month. And then on the normal contributions, you pay those with every payroll.
And is the 769,000 what we owe?
That's the whole, that is,
Or is that his analysis of what we should pay?
that is an analysis of what they think we will owe based on 2021 numbers. The only numbers that are rock solid set out of those numbers are the UAL contribution, because they tell you what those are, the big lump sum payment that you make in July. The rest is all based strictly on your payroll. So they are making assumptions on what they think your payroll will be at each level of your thing. It is clear as mud, Kathleen.
So my question is, in July, how much did we pay?
Remember what that check was? Probably close to 500,000.
And so next July,
Mm-hmm.
we are expected to pay 700.
300.
But
No,
isn't this,
not next
hold
July.
on, isn't this Jeff's report? So when do we get that bill to know exactly how much we pay?
It came in those reports, but we will only know exactly how much we will pay in terms of the ARC, the annual required contribution, the lump sum payment we pay in July, not the amounts that get paid every single payroll.
And just to be clear, Jeff pulled these numbers from the reports that they provided. He's just summing this up for us. We can also take a look, if you go to the digital copy of what Eric provided, there's a link, and that gives you the actual report if you wanna dive into that, but I'd
I'd like to know the exact number that we're gonna pay in July.
so.
I'm just trying to see if it's in one of these charts right now, because it very well might.
It totally could be.
That's the forecast. He's saying,
It's right under that piece of
Right,
money.
but what they do is they
Report.
kind of take and mix and match it all in their projections.
for the financial year, it's page 6. It's page 6, it says the latest report project that the financial year 2025 cash payment will be $739,226, up from the previous forecast of $619.
Yeah, but again, this isn't the lump sum amount. This is looking at their projections for this plus the UAL, plus the normal contributions.
So did you want, so then the pension employer payment as a percentage of our budget, did you want to look at that on page 10? Based on the recent published pre-audit year-end profit and loss statement, pension payments for 2022, 2023 of $716,779.18 represents 10%. Do you think that that's
You lost me, so long.
page 10?
Page 10, last line, subsection 3, column 8.
Line 25.
I did my reading.
Right.
Letters.
This still doesn't answer the question that Kathleen, I think, is asking, which is,
What exactly?
what is that lump sum payment in next July?
But I thought that was what this,
No, these are including the normal cost payments that you make with every payroll as well.
okay.
You can get back to me. I know where to find you.
Okay.
Well, all the reports are actually on our website, so.
Yeah. Okay, I'll find it. In the mud.
I mean, that's the total, but that's not what we're just paying. Yeah, I guess, I see what you're asking.
What color would you like it highlighted? I'll do it after October.
Alright, yeah, and The only other thing that I'm gonna blab on more about, and then I'll move
The
on,
argument?
is, I would like to second your thought and request that we have somebody come in and kind of figure out what we can do, and what's the biggest bang for our buck, because clearly something needs to be done, and, while I would prefer not to be taking money out of the general budget to not do things like in our parks and at the pool, I do feel like we do need to be responsible and try to figure out how to pay down these liabilities. And our people deserve raises, but we can't give raises if we can't fund things. So, anybody else have any questions or statements?
I mean, what I'm seeing just as a theme is that these numbers are just are continuing to climb,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And like, at what point are we in a place where this is kind of like an insurmountable liability? And are we gonna get to that place,
Yeah,
right?
we're kind of there.
And so, if that's the case, what are our options?
Well, we have the option of trying to find, we will owe the stuff that we owe for the employees that we've already made promises for and any employees that we currently have. If there was a possibility that our fire department could merge with a different fire department and they would take on those costs, then that would stop our costs from continuing to increase in terms of that. But like up until the point at which those other people take on, we incur all those liabilities unless they agree to take on past liabilities if they're, do you understand what I'm saying? No.
I do, I understand.
And I don't think that we're gonna be able to find somebody to do that. Like we love our fire
Cost
department.
liabilities, right?
Nobody's gonna take our past liability. Like, so I didn't say that quite correct.
No, you did.
Let's say,
Yeah, no, I thought-
let's say tomorrow,
No, we got it.
okay.
Yeah,
totally
no, you
said it.
actually,
Yeah.
you made a lot of sense.
I made a lot of sense.
Yeah, don't
Convoluted-
mess this up.
Convoluted way of saying it.
Don't mud it up.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, but I guess it's just, I wonder, at what point is there a critical mass where there's like a decision that needs to be made that might bring us into a different direction? Because I see these reports every year and I see the increasing liability that we're looking at. So I just wanted to, I don't know, it's kind of an open-ended question, I don't have an answer.
Well, to respond to you and then also to respond to Kathleen, I mean, make no mistake, your pension payments and the escalating costs are absolutely eat into services, capital improvements, everything else. So you're either increasing fees, you're lowering service levels. That's kind of, because our
well only goes.
our revenue stream is finite, and it's pretty defined.
And we can't get
You
taxes.
know, now, investing will certainly lower those, putting something stocked against it. There's a lot of different options. There's direct options through CalPERS, there's options through third-party kind of investment firms and legal firms. And again, I like to look at this in combination with your OPEB liability too, because these are both kind of 30-year projected liabilities. So, and that's why pension is a weird one, because it really is a bit of a Richter scale in that, last year, for instance, it dropped. You're sitting in the middle of two very
Volatile years.
anomaly of years. One where you got a 20% rate of return, and then one where you got a negative 6% rate of return. So you watched it drop significantly, only to then spike back up even higher than it was when it started. So, but yeah, make no mistake, every penny you have to put into this, as it doesn't meet projections, as you're unfunded. Originally their theory is, you make these normal contributions as part of payroll, the employee makes a percentage contribution, and then the investments make up the rest. Well, when the investments fall short, the district, i.e. the taxpayer or the fee payer, has to pay the difference. So if your revenue doesn't grow in the same amount that your pension liability and payment for that year has grown, then you're finding that funding somewhere else. You're either increasing fees for something to make up for the revenue shortfall, or you're decreasing services to lower your overall expenses. So yeah, I mean, there's, to your point, it's not something that just, it's a, it'll all take care of itself, because it won't. And that's kind of the point of some of Jeff's things here is, just because you had one good year last year, which certainly helped, you look at this, even through and I would never say, look at the 30-year trend level, because that makes 0 sense. But even you look at this in the last 6, and you can see, it's a pretty solid arc that goes up. To answer your question, Kathleen, next year in July, we're gonna pay $499,018.
$499 what?
18.
That is the lump sum payment, but then we will have had payments that we're paying throughout each pay period.
Correct.
So as a total, it's gonna be more, but the lump sum will be more.
Right.
And what we budgeted is for that lump sum plus the individual payments, which is what the 773 is.
That makes sense.
Can I tack on to Lisa's question, and it's it's an open question that's not gonna get answered tonight, but kind of coming back to, at what point do we as a community services district have to look at reaching out to other, fire agencies, things like that, to start to think about a merge, or start to think about, I'm not even sure merge is the right word for that.
Can I respond? first
Yeah,
here?
please.
We're way past thinking about it. Those actions have happened years ago.
Okay.
It is not,
We don't have a partner.
it's not that easy.
Yeah, oh, for
Yeah,
sure,
it's a
for
very
sure.
complex setup. There's legal challenges involved. There is, the fire is expensive, so you gotta ask yourself, why would other agencies
Absolutely.
looking to get into that? Just to give a very easy example, and something that we've done a lot of research, let's say, okay, why don't we combine and see if Santa Fe will take on responsibility? They do not have the legal avenue to take on the legal responsibility for fire protection here. So.
Is that because we're outside of the city limits?
You're exactly right. So they can't do it outside of city limits. So that basically kind of leaves you with one option, which could then be a contract for service. However, the district still maintains the legal responsibility for providing that fire protection. We've just chosen to accomplish that by contracting it out to somebody else.
Yeah.
By outsourcing it. So
Okay.
if something, per se, let's say 10 years, you have a partner and it's city X.
Okay.
And they say, we're no longer capable of providing this service for you, which does happen.
Sure.
It falls back on this district now to launch a fire department from scratch.
Okay.
So contracting for service is a rough
Okay.
thing. The county isn't looking to, the county contracts some of their areas out. They're not looking to take on,
Right.
we've done a lot of work on that
Okay.
front. The chief and I have had a ton of conversations on this front.
Yeah.
And and even let's say if, in a perfect world, let's say agency X comes in and takes over. Whatever our accrued pension liability is to that point, that stays with us. That doesn't go to the.
No, I
That
understand
was
that.
that
I understand
long-
that. Yeah, no, you got that. You
The word-
nailed it.
word
Yeah, they
math
would
that
take
I
it
said.
on from that point forward, whatever is kind
Right.
of earned
Right.
and accrued. However, it gets even trickier though, because the way these pension models work, in theory, it's kind of like a giant pyramid scheme. They're relying on the new people at the bottom to
Yes.
fund the people
Yes.
at the top of the pyramid.
Exactly.
And they're hoping that the people at the top, for lack of a better term, fall off while these people slowly make their way up the
Yes.
pyramid. That's how it works. So if all of a sudden you stop contributing at the bottom level, well, that's when the actuaries get involved and your UAL just skyrocket, because we're no longer gonna have these regular contributions from you
Okay.
either. So it's math and quantum physics way beyond my,
And that's why
my
we're
level of
thinking about
understanding.
taking money from the general fund,
Right.
setting it aside every year, possibly putting it into a different account, not run by CalPERS, to get maybe some more.
well, you have various options.
So,
There's
yeah.
a lot of different ways. There's PARs, CalPERS, in the same way that our OPEB trust is managed by a division of CalPERS. It's totally different than their pension investment division. So
We're not
it
getting
is,
any more money yet.
but it's just
Okay.
worked in a different way. So there are a lot of options and a lot of things to look at. And like I said, you would be doing a disservice if you didn't look at this in conjunction with also looking at what you're doing on the OPEB side. Because, you know, if I'm just, again, using round numbers, we wanna put 100,000 a year into it. Well, is paying down, adding another 100,000 to what we're already putting into the OPEB trust, gonna bring that
Right.
overall level of debt down more than, you know, just because of the way the actuarial models work.
Yeah, okay.
So that is where
that
what
too.
I'm saying is,
Right.
okay, we can afford X amount. Where's the best place to put it? Is it to start paying down the pension thing, or is it to boost up and bring the, because
Or-
we're still not paying the full arc for OPEB.
Right.
100,000's nice, but you know, when we get our reports, it says you should be putting 300,000 in. So if you do that, then your OPEB liability stops growing. In theory.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? It's 8:10, and I wanna make sure, not them, this is important, but
I'm
this
good.
is like a whole agenda item.
I have many questions, but it's not for this time.
Are you sure?
Well, but
There's
again,
one.
Kathleen, to your point,
There's one,
I just looked, I mean, all of those reports where all of this came from is online, I just pulled them up, and the very front page is where I got those numbers from. And you have to look at 5 different reports, but it's broken in because we have 5 different classes of pension classification. 3 within safety and 2 within miscellaneous, which is basically everybody not safety. And then you have what's known as classic, which are people
I don't think it's helping.
before 2013.
No, it is, I just like,
okay.
you have,
Classic
you
right
have
on
three,
there.
you have 3 of safety and everyone who's, not safety.
Right, well, then you have 2 on the non-safety, because you have what's known as PEPRA, which is the pension, the Public Employer Pension Reform,
You guys.
public employee or something like that, that then set rates, so pension rates can no longer be negotiated for people that are hired after 2013. For miscellaneous employees, it's this number, for safety employees, it's this number.
But the 700 is the grand total of all of that, and the 400 is just this.
The 499 is
118.
what we'll be writing a check for in July.
Yeah, but,
And then the rest is their projection based on what they project our payroll to be in the different people at the different classes.
Got it.
Totally clear.
and just, you know.
Chris will explain it to me.
Right. I'll do a
later.
lecture on this
Also-
tomorrow in the first period.
By the way,
My boss will love it.
I had Jeff do, because this was while we were doing mostly Zoom, he actually like went through.
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay.
I got this much capacity,
Okay, I'm just saying,
not this.
There's a lot of information about it out there, and you know, in the last, since the late '90s, probably more like 2010 when you actually get huge market crashes, is when, mid 2000s, late 2000s is when these things really started to blow up, and CalPERS changed how they started passing on those unfunded liabilities to agencies. It's certainly not unique to us, and this spreads through
teachers.
every pension system out there.
I just like knowing the numbers, I don't need to understand
Okay.
all the mush.
Alright, can we move on to the district manager report? Are people good with that?
Sure.
Okay, Eric?
Alright. Boy, where to go? Fire department recruiting, and again, it's something that, Chief and I just had a further conversation. We're still hitting a lot of challenges just trying to recruit somebody in. We had somebody we were really excited about. It'd be nice to have 5 people who we were excited about, get to choose one, but they seem to be coming one at a time. And then this particular person pulled out for various reasons. I actually had a very nice conversation with him, and understood and appreciated why he decided to kind of move a different direction. So we're kind of a little bit back to the drawing board on this. I'm gonna be sitting with the captain, sitting with the chief there, and some of his colleagues, and looking at what can we do. I might be optimistic, I might be completely wrong, but I do feel like as you start to wind down your seasonal hires, you have a lot of people kind of re-entering the market who took seasonal jobs in the fire industry. And we're probably going to look at, just to see what happens, running concurrent recruitments for both firefighter, paramedic, and EMT firefighter, which is a lower level of medical response. Because at the end of the day, we got to get somebody in the door.
Yeah.
And we're kind of shooting high for firefighter, paramedics, which are in incredible demand. And at the end of the day, we're a small agency and we don't pay a lot, and your opportunities for advancement when you work here are minimal. Because, you know, if you're a firefighter, paramedic, you wanna be an engineer, well, we only have 3 of those positions, and if you wanna be an officer, we only have 3 of those positions. And you just don't get the same level and opportunity to advance as a larger department might. So, it's high on the radar, trying to get through some of these other things right now. Admittedly, I don't have the time to dedicate to this like I wish I had, but we're gonna make a strong push and see what we can kind of do. Lack of having a HR department, you know, when you are the HR department, trying to figure everything else out. So, but that said, we gotta get somebody in. So we'll put a new push on that within the next couple weeks here.
Can I ask you a really quick question on this? The feedback that you got from him, do you sense that it will be an issue again?
It could be, I mean, everything is separate. This particular person, without getting into too great a detail, wasn't young, wasn't new to the system. He's a person in his mid-30s who ultimately wanted to have opportunities to advance. He had goals on wanting to be an officer and a captain. You know, he wasn't a new person kind of trying to start even somebody in his 20s. He was somebody who was older and saw us kind of at where he was at in his career arc and what he was looking to do. And it was just, I didn't want to, and I respected him for saying this, but didn't want to come here and only be here for a year or two because he was able to kind of get in somewhere that's going to allow him greater opportunities to advance his career.
We appreciate that as well.
That said, I would have taken him for a year or two, to be quite honest with you. So, yeah, you know, and again, you know, the pay is a big part of it too, so we do pay low. A lot of people, I mean, it's amazing how the landscape has changed for the labor market and the fire, you know, I mean, there's agencies out there that are throwing hefty signing bonuses to people to come work for them, things like that. We don't have the kind of resource to compete with that.
As we just saw.
Right.
I mean, we love to pay everybody, but.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of other kind of things at play too. I mean, we don't have, you know, without having the volunteer department, that was a nice avenue by which to kind of recruit people in. And we don't have that going anymore, so that is a barrier. And I understand why it's not there, and it was kind of unfortunate the way that it went away, but I get it. So, but it hurts in times like this when you're trying to bring somebody on and you don't have a group of people who are ready and familiar with your agency, the people who work here, everything else, because, you know, people make a life decision, especially firefighters, where they come and spend 48 hours to 96 hours straight, you know, living with these people as well. So when you have those types of relationships, it helps. Any other questions on that, or Chief, anything to chime in?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Well, let's not get carried away.
It's true.
On the Oak Senior Living Center, I actually had a conversation with one of the developers last week. Obviously, they didn't hit their deadline for being able to get that bridge built this year. They too are working with the county and all their permitting. That's where they've been for
They were so close
a while.
though.
Not when you're working with the county.
That was last year though.
Oh,
So, long story short, they're still hoping now that they've given up the ghost on trying to get it done this year. They'll be focusing on hopefully getting all the permitting and everything approved and can potentially start construction next spring, at which point we'll just kind of reevaluate the trail
That
project
story.
and things at that time in terms of cost and contribution and everything else.
Yeah.
The storm is brewing.
Other items of note, just to point out, Lisa, Director Ruggieri, is attending the CSDA Special District Leadership Academy in person. It's happening in Santa Rosa in late mid-October. We were able to get a scholarship for the complete registration fee, so thank you to Lisa for giving up 2.5 days of your life to go do that. I do think it's the preeminent board and governance workshop out there. So
I learned a lot.
Yeah, so did I. When I did it, I almost wanted to go back. I just don't have 2.5 days of life available to me right now. And then the play structure replacement project, it's still in the same kind of place right now. Everything's on order, just waiting for those parts. I have no reason to believe it still won't be able to kind of start breaking ground mid to late next month. So
should we
Where we
put
go.
up signs or something so that people know that a park closure is going to be occurring soon?
I wouldn't worry about it.
I think they're gonna know when it's
Well, no, I'm thinking of October is a time where there's like parties outdoors and stuff, and people have been using, as always, our park for a place to do, and if they
We'll
are
figure it
like
out.
sending out the thing, like we're gonna do the party here, but then the playground's closed, I don't know if you want
Yeah.
that.
I don't even know the dates are.
Yeah.
You know, so until we had set dates, I wouldn't put any information out there other than, yeah, at some point in October and early November, the playground will be shut down. I think people are somewhat aware of that, and then we'll certainly put the word out. It won't be closed for a super long period
Yeah,
of
it's
time.
3 weeks, right?
Have we been missing any pieces lately?
Well,
Other
it's-
than the
It's
slide?
the
slide.
slide, yeah, that was kind of a big one, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Maybe they can-
Not okay, if the people who took it are watching the video, not okay. All right,
Yeah,
is there any questions for Eric?
better request,
Could you please return it?
if you're watching.
I'm broken. Anybody have any questions for Eric?
Only one.
No? All right, let's move on.
Thank you for all your information today.
That'll be a quiz.
Chief, we are on to your fire department matters. Would you like to give us your report? Or just a summary?
Absolutely.
Read it?
No worries. First, sorry I wasn't able to attend last month. I went to visit with family, my mother in British Columbia, and my aunt and uncle there. And right after I left, they had a fire in West Kelowna, and the embers blew right across the lake over into Kelowna and forced the evacuation of 20,000+ people. So then they had a landslide that took out part of Highway 97, the second landslide in
They
about
say
3
don't come
months.
visit?
Yeah, so, and the smoke had just cleared about midway through my visit from a fire down in Osoyoos, which is south of Penticton. And so, as much as they're going through it right now, I think we're pretty lucky. Let me find some wood.
Oh my gosh,
This
yes.
this year that to say I was gone last month for that reason, but I had a great visit. Upon returning, I got some information to share here. It was a fairly light month when it came to vegetation management within Marinwood, but Director Mark Brown indicated that Cal Fire, they were awarded $2.6 million to supplement the Measure C money that we have for vegetation projects and fuel removal and other things, and so I think that's a big bolster. I'm not sure what that bolstered money is going to do for Marinwood exactly, but I hope to get more information from Executive Director Brown in the near future. But anytime we get external money on top of the money we're already spending, that's a great thing. I'm assuming that's going to go countywide. There are also 3 big projects underway right now. The Novato shaded fuel break, but then just recently there was a conversation or a meeting, preliminary meeting with a bunch of stakeholders, Councilmember Rachel Kurtz from San Rafael, Supervisor Mary Sackett, some of the environmental personnel who have a vested interest in the projects that are taking place throughout this vicinity in this area. Some other individuals who just have a lot of historical perspective and knowledge about fire and or vegetation in this area, all came to meet at Ridgewood Drive in the Ridgewood Fire Road a few weeks ago, and provided some education about that big project that's coming from the San Anselmo to the San Rafael area. And so I just thought that was important to share, because while we see the other larger projects taking place, there's one that's coming here that's very proximal to everyone here. So more information on that to follow. I think it's going to get started sometime this fall. But there was a significant number of people there, 50+ people showed up and took the tour that day and had some great questions. And Kate Anderson, who's been working closely with staff here, Quinn Gardner, the interim fire chief from Ross Valley, Dan Mahoney, and a few others spoke. I only spoke at the end. I didn't feel like it was my place until I just shared the huge effort that I saw coming together here in Marin County. And I've said those things before here, so I'm not going to repeat them now, but I really hope Measure C is renewed in about 5 years, because we're coming upon almost the midpoint of the measure, and it's doing a lot of exceptional work. One of the other things that I'll speak to briefly is the insurance. Pascal Carcenti today sent out an email regarding his research that he's been actually performing. One of our fire commissioners doing some digging and trying to understand what the census block groups within Marin County, and specifically within Marinwood, what those look like and how they're impacting the insurance industry's decisions on whether to either cancel policy, write policy, or not offer policy at all. And what he discovered is going back to the 1980s, there's specific blocks that insurance companies are probably looking at to kind of weigh risk. And so given that, his information and his research was just that, his information and his research, but it could stand to reason that one of the insurance companies is still writing policy, still keeping policy, and still favorable to insure individuals looking for insurance, maybe using something comparable to what he landed on. And so I don't want to share that right now because it's in an email, but I can push it to Eric and we can send it out just so you have some information about what he landed on. But it's kind of, you can't really see clearly, but you kind of see what he did as far as, outlining the mapping area. It's interesting information, and using that in concert with some of the other information that I'm going to share right now. The MWPA has been working closely with state legislators. Cal Fire Chiefs is now also working with state legislators. There's going to be more information on that at next month's conference, so I'll bring that back in a future report. But there's a lot of effort right now to help the insurance companies see the great work that's being done here in Marin County, Marinwood, San Rafael, on the West Coast, Stinson Beach, and all these areas in between for the various 5 zones or so that are being slowly but surely and steadily being reduced with vegetation and fire risk. Despite that work, some of the insurance companies have not been treating us favorably here, and as a result, there's just a couple that people can still rely on. One is the Insurance Institute of Business and Home Safety, IBHS. They have a wildfire prepared designation that may compel some other insurers to help maintain coverage, and then the data that they share kind of enables the homeowners to demonstrate how they prepared and things that they've done that should qualify them to be able to maintain their insurance and not be subject to cancellations. Still, we're seeing mixed results coming from different insurance companies depending on where they're landing on this, and the exodus seemed to be starting with one and then another follows right behind it. But there's also some other organizations such as United Policyholders that are doing work to try to ensure that there's fairness in the process, and there's also an opportunity for regulations to be enacted that can compel the insurers to not bail out on the individuals that need the insurance. And so when you see movement coming from different angles, there's got to be a solution at some point, I think, because there's the right individuals and the right mix of individuals with different interests and or expertise trying to reach state legislators now. There may be a way to curtail some of what's going on, but we're going to learn more as we move on. So more hope on the horizon for that, but for right now, there's only just a few insurance companies that are still giving people the opportunity to insure their properties, and sometimes it's at a higher premium than you would like, but it's still insurance at this point. There's also an innovation that's upcoming, and it's called the creation of an insurance pool. So I'm really looking to see what more information comes behind that. That's apparently folks who have lost their insurance may be able to go to FireSafe Marin and click on the link, and thank you, Eric, for correcting that link, because he went to click on it to see what was going on, which I didn't. I assumed it was good. It's spelled almost exactly the same way, but for whatever reason it didn't translate. That link was not working, but he's found a way to make sure that link's working. So please access FireSafe Marin's guidance on that and try to learn more about the potential and upcoming insurance pool that may be created. American Red Cross event, really got a great story to tell you on this that's not in the report, but over the course of the past year, going back to April of 2022, really a year and a half, American Red Cross volunteers have gone out to Contempo Marin and other areas, identifying clearly that some of the seniors living in those areas had not had smoke detectors and alarm detection. And they installed some 75 alarms in 23 homes back in April of last year. Earlier this year, they went back out and did it, and then just roughly about 6 weeks ago, maybe even sooner than that, they, August 19th, just under 4 weeks ago, they installed some more alarms. 2 weeks later, there was a structure fire on Teton Court, and the individuals, there were 6, 4 adults, 2 children, I believe, a pet, that all escaped that fire at 3:30 a.m. because they had the detection from smoke detectors that were installed last April. So just talk about it making an impact. And our members at 58 were there at both the installation detection installation event, but also at the structure fire itself. And so, just kudos and major appreciation to the American Red Cross and their volunteers for coming out and truly making a difference with installing smoke detectors in our community. Cesar Correa, Ryan Brackton, and Willis Kelly were there at the most recent event, and they're pictured there. But I think the effort's going to continue. There was an email blast that went out to all the volunteers and everyone that helped, and just everybody was so thrilled. They were obviously concerned about those who suffered the loss that they did, but just so grateful that they were able to leave with their lives. And so it's just a reminder of how important the smoke detectors are. We had a station visit from a youngster named Owen. He stopped by the station. Well, apparently the apparatus was out on the apron, not parked behind the roll-up doors. And the little kid just, to no end was, Mommy, I gotta go see, I wanna go see. And so she made an impromptu visit and brought him by, and the smile on his face when he sat in the engine was enough for me to then say, okay, this is gonna make the report. I gotta put this one here. So, future Marinwood firefighter recruit.
Here we go, we'll start working on that too.
Hey, we're starting early now, we're starting early. We gotta get them out as toddlers.
Wait for another 20 years.
Right. But, that being said, that's just, another fine example of someone seeing our personnel in the best possible light they can. One more item before I summarize here. The Girls Fire Camp. There's a, when I first came to Marin County, I had seen this girls camp and other iterations of girls camp in multiple locations. And we identified early on that everyone here within the county had some challenges with trying to get female firefighters on board. And that was true even in Alameda County and the South Bay and on the peninsula, but especially so here. And so I polled the other fire chiefs about, their interest in trying to do a girls fire camp. And, initially I think, it sounded like a good idea, but I don't know if they figured how it would work because there weren't enough women to run the camp, which I didn't realize when I first brought it forward. And so that being said,
It's the chicken or the egg, you can't.
Right. So with that though, we were able to find the Golden State Women in Fire Service, an agency that I know has been working around in a variety of areas, and they agreed, and they had already been targeting Marin County and the North Bay for future iterations of their camp. And so we partnered with them this year. They're going to run the camp from October 7th and 8th. They're going to be at Novato Fire Station 62. And the target number is 50 young ladies between the ages of 14 and 18 who will be able to come and get this experience firsthand, watching women in all ranks go out and do a variety of skills, whether it's vehicle extrication, forcible entry, advancing hose line, donning SCBA, rappelling down the side of the building, you name it. They're going to see women in action doing the job and hopefully be inspired watching and seeing and learning from them. So that's taking place both days, the 7th and 8th of October. If you have a chance, or you know of anyone who may be interested, please share this information with them. Right now, out of the 50, we just opened it up this past week, and there's 27 out of the 50 slots already taken. 13 though of those are from Marin County high schools. I'm hoping that number increases between now and the start of the camp. Their goal is to try to get at least 30 young women from Marin County and then leave the other 20 for surrounding agencies and jurisdictions who might be able to send some attendees. So more to follow on that. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of photographs and other things. So, and last but not least, stats. Lower response time. 5 minutes, 10 seconds. I'm hoping to see sub 5 minutes at some point. That's just gonna blow me away. But yes, 5 minutes, 10 seconds. We're getting close to sub 5 minutes.
A cookie bonus for getting under 5?
A cookie
'Cause
bonus?
we can't afford money, but we
Well,
can get
I
a
love
cookie
chocolate
bonus.
chip cookies. I can always take those on behalf of the members and share them afterwards.
I think you need to make a few calls to your house.
So that
Help the
concludes my
numbers.
report.
Yeah, calls to my house, because I'm right around the corner, so that'll be like a 2-minute.
See, well, you know what, that'll help the
I'll
response
let the
time.
girls, I'll let the girls do the cooking.
If anyone has any questions,
I actually do have a question, but I'll see if anybody else has a question.
My only question is on the her camp.
Yes. Hero.
It said hero.
Hero.
Sorry,
Hero.
with that.
Hero.
Okay, got it. Right. It says 14 to 18, but then it says high school. Is high school mandatory? I only asked
I
because
don't
I
think it's
work with-
mandatory, and I think
Okay.
they're targeting the high schools with their outreach,
Right.
so,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I work with a lot of girls who are 14 and like in that 14 zone, so I'll
Okay.
get that out there to them.
You know, and I know when I went to high school, it was 10th, 11th, 12th grade, and now middle school is 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
Right,
And so you may be 14 in the 9th grade and still fall into high school in some schools, or in middle school in
Right.
others. So,
Is the 14 a hard stop? I mean, a hard start, I guess. would be-
I believe so. I believe they want to make sure that at least 14. Yeah. But it's worth asking, especially if they're, you know, not able to meet their numbers, put the name in and, you know,
Or if you like
they'll be
just-
14 next month as an
Yeah.
example, right? That might be,
You said November.
yeah,
November
that's pretty
birthday.
close.
Just switch up that. Do it all the time.
I had a question.
Sure.
At one point, you had told us that they are looking at evacuation routes in Marinwood and what the best routes are. Are we gonna get information on that, and are we gonna be able to disseminate that?
I haven't received the evacuation study report just yet, but my understanding is it's almost just like pending and imminent. So
Okay.
as soon as it comes, I'll certainly be willing to share that information
Okay.
quickly, yes.
And we can put it on our website and stuff. Hopefully we will not need it this year.
There's 2 ways out.
We managed to get
Or
to
ever.
September 1st without one, so, alright, that was my question. Anybody else?
Then I'll just personally jump in. I'm trying to like count backwards, which is tough for me. I don't think I've been in a meeting since my wife became one of the statistics on the response.
No, you haven't.
So I already came down and talked to the guys who responded that day, but I will say a personal thank you to you. My wife had a bike accident that rendered her unconscious out in Lucas Valley, right by kind of between Juvenile Hall and Rotary Manor right there. And the response from both the fire department and the EMTs that came out and everything that followed for both my wife and for me, since I was on site as well,
Right.
was phenomenal. It was everything that you would want as a leader to be
That's
to
great.
happen for the people that are under your direction. So I think
It's great to hear, I appreciate that, and I
Yeah.
hope your wife's okay now.
she's great.
That's good.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But it was some scary times there for sure.
Oh, I can imagine,
Yeah.
yes. Well, thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that, I had no
absolutely.
idea. Okay,
Wear your
Absolutely.
helmet.
yeah.
It was under 5 minutes, wasn't
Yeah, it should have helped, it should have
No,
helped.
it was
with
under
the-
5 minutes and 10 seconds.
Alright, thank you, Chief.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There you
So
go.
I'm gonna go pick up my little guy from basketball
Yeah.
practice, and it's at 9:30, so,
Thanks, Chief.
thanks.
Yo, hopefully you can make it.
Oh, I got time.
Alright,
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
alright, Parks and Recreation matters, Luke is not here for a good reason. I think we all kind of read through everything.
Any questions?
Any questions? I have thank yous that I want to make, but I guess Eric and Tiffany, you guys can.
We'll
Tiffany,
accept
would you like to
all, we'll
present?
accept all the credit.
I mean, I just wanted to say thank you to Robin again for all the work that went up going into camp, finding people, training people, running camp. It was, my kids did not go this year, but I heard from everybody else that they had a blast, and so kudos, and then also to JP for, we're almost done with the season, but a very smooth, amazing season at the pool with, yeah, so just, thank you. And for Carolyn for another amazing Marinwood review. All right, that was my,
I just have one question because I don't remember. For the bench, does the family pick the bench or do we pick the bench for gym?
We looked through a few different options and presented them with some different options to kind of look at and choose from. And then they ultimately settled on the one that's out there.
do you not like it?
I mean, I thought, I really like the cement benches in the park, but I think it's also, that's what I was used to seeing, like that's what the Algina's got. So that's what I was, in my mind, that's what I was expecting, so that's why I was just asking. No, I think it's great and I love it, but that's the bench that like, I was always used to.
That's what you were imagining when you imagined a bench there.
Correct, because that's what,
Okay.
when they don't love.
My question would be for the music in the park, is the staff gonna take on
Bells.
bringing in the musicians, or are we now looking for another volunteer to take that over?
That would definitely be a better Luke question to ask.
It's
You know,
not,
I mean,
it's
Luke
not an
probably-
imminent question, seeing as how
Right.
it's summertime. So
Right. Well, and Luke is pretty tied in with
I was gonna say, he's a
the local
musician.
music scene and, you know, being a musician and everything else.
He might actually want to take that on.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know if one. Might be a strong term,
Maybe if he can take
but,
something else off of his plate.
But I think
Yeah.
he's seen this coming for a little while too.
Okay.
And
So,
with
we have no shortage of people finding us.
Okay.
We get a lot of emails from a lot of different, you know,
Okay.
quote unquote promoters or bands,
Right,
or,
right,
you know,
right.
it's a pretty well known venue that we get a lot of notice from people that say, hey, here's a couple links to some of our music, we'd love to come out and do one of your music in the parks, blah, blah, blah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
but I
not-
get better for Luke.
Not that I wanna add more to their, or your plate, but with the weather being so nice in September, how come we don't continue?
If his eyes
Hey.
shoot lasers.
It gets dark a lot earlier, so that's part of it.
Okay,
Yeah, well, if you wanna come clean up with us in the dark, which isn't.
I mean, I would.
That last one is tricky.
'Cause I just think it's such
It's a summertime music thing, and to your point, we've got a lot of other things going on, and at that point in time, they're trying to flip the turf and get it more ready for other things. Again, a better Luke question, but,
I just think
I-
it's such a fun, like, it's one of those events that like when you're at the last one, again, it will happen no matter when we end it, but there's so many community members that only come out to that. So when there's only 4 of them, it would be nice if there was 6 of
But
them.
there's more. There is the beer fest.
That you have to buy.
That's true. You could hang out without buying on the outskirts.
you don't have to drink.
You know, to drink.
But you know, then they've also, you know, started doing a lot more live music and some of the other events that they do too.
Yeah,
I know, but it's not music in the park, it's not,
I-
like, so.
I will
that's what I'm
say,
saying.
music in the park's a lot of work.
I get it. Taxes is a lot of work too, but they have to be done.
all right, with that,
Volunteer
does
to do
anybody else have
No, but
any other questions about Parks and Rec?
I know.
Oh, I guess I had a question, but Luke's not here, but updating some of the aging plumbing in post-summer building maintenance, does that include the hand washing station in the pool area for the women's restroom? Because that only had one working the last time I was in there.
Maybe a better question for Luke.
Yeah, well,
I don't know those.
and I'm not
exact
gonna email
specifics.
him because I don't want him to look at stuff while he's away, but yeah. All right, I don't think that there's any other questions. Okay, does anybody have any board items of interest for future agenda items?
Nope.
Just an update on FEMA, an update on everything else that we are juggling, I guess, right? And
I'll also have agreements for our annual contracts with the county for CSA 13 and for the county park.
Homeowners Association.
Yeah,
And
one
when-
for the Rotary Village, all that, county park.
okay, when does the OPEB stuff, is that
That's every other year.
every other year, okay. All right, anybody else have any other, no? Okay, all right.
Thank you,
Motion to
everybody.
adjourn. Our next regular meeting is October 10th. Editor Jones will not be here.
Ooh.
Choice.
10.